Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're just going to give folks a minute or so to keep entering the room. But we're really happy to be having this conversation. We haven't had one of these in a while, and I know that a lot of you are really interested in pursuing a career on the bench of some sort. So we're excited to bring this to you. In the meantime, while we're waiting for people, please use the comments. Let us know your name and where in California or the US or the world you're joining us from. It's nice to see someone. Hey, Celicia, nice to see you. Hi, Emma from Chicago. Nice. We are going to get started in like 20 seconds. So just hold on. We're letting people into the room. Welcome, welcome. It's nice to see so many familiar names. Hello, Elliot. All right, let's go ahead and get started. I am gonna pass it over to our co-host from the John Paul Stevens Foundation, Anjali, and she's going to welcome you all in. But thank you for being here, everyone. Hey, Anjali, take it away.
Thanks, Carlos. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our live webinar titled, Is a Judicial Clerkship Right for Me? My name is Anjali Aurora Dow, and I'm the Program Director at the John Paul Stevens Foundation. And the Stevens Foundation is dedicated to promoting public interest and social justice careers in the next generation of American lawyers. And this webinar is a part of a partnership between the John Paul Stevens Foundation and California ChangeLawyers, with a joint mission to provide information to our fellowship communities of all types of public interest legal careers. And on the panel today, we have 4 amazing speakers who will be offering insights on the judicial clerkship experience. First, we have Honorable Judge Dean Hansel, a California Superior Court judge. Next, we have 3 alumni fellows who each received a Justice John Paul Stevens Fellowship while in law school and have since graduated law school and are currently practicing attorneys. First, we have Angel Lockhart, who received her fellowship in 2021. Next, we have Jonah Chadwick Grego, who received his fellowship in 2022. And last, we have Dominique Fenton, who received his fellowship in 2020. I'm grateful to the 4 of you for taking the time out of your very busy schedules to join us today. And last but not least, I want to introduce Shantae Coleman, who is the Deputy Director of California ChangeLawyers and will be our moderator for today's community conversation. So without further ado, I'll pass it on to Shantae to get us started.
Oh, thank you so much, Anjali. I really appreciate it. We're so grateful for our partnership with the John Paul Stevens Foundation to do this webinar. So yeah, welcome everyone. My name is Shantae Coleman. My pronouns are she, her, and they, them. And I'm zooming in from the land of the Kumeyaay people today, which is San Diego, California. And as Anjali said, I'm the Deputy Director of California ChangeLawyers. So we are a community foundation that is investing in the next generation of legal change makers who are fighting for a better and more just California. And we do this through a variety of mechanisms, but scholarships to law students, fellowships, and also through our grant making. And so speaking of building a better justice system, we need change lawyers in all places, including in our court system. And so today's webinar is focused on a very specific job, judicial clerkships, right there in the title. And so we're really going to pull back the curtain today and demystify what these jobs are really like, and how you can put your best foot forward if you decide that one of these positions is for you. So our amazing panel will share a little bit about themselves and about their journeys. They're going to provide some tips and resources for you. And while they do, just please keep in mind that while we do our best to share what we can, every judge and process is different. And so, you know, we can't speak to all judges in all places, but we will do our best to just provide some information as we can. So last, if you have questions, and I see a lot of folks using the chat box, we love that. Please keep using it. You can throw questions in the chat box and we will get to them at the end in our Q&A. And some of our panelists have even offered to respond to questions in the chat. So you might even get a response there if you ask a question. So with that said, let's meet our panelists. So first, I want to introduce Judge Dean Hansel. Judge Hansel is a California Superior Court judge appointed in 2016. And excitingly, he's also a former California ChangeLawyers board member, which we have a lot of gratitude for. Thank you, Judge Hansel. Previous to the bench, he was a partner in global law firm Hogan Lovells. and his prior public service, which is extensive, includes being co-founder and co-president of the Gay and Lesbian Alliance Against Defamation Los Angeles, and president of the board of advisors of the UCLA Fielding School of Public Health. He has authored 45 book chapters and articles and received his JD from Northwestern. So please, warm welcome to Judge Hansel as one of our panelists today. Hey, Judge, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks so much for being here. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I'm delighted to have this conversation.
Yay, awesome, awesome. All right, and now I'm going to let our law clerks introduce themselves. So if each of you can share your name, location, and where you are currently clerking, that would be great. So let's start with Angel. Hi, Angel, welcome.
Hello, everyone. I'm Angel Lockhart. I am currently residing in Arizona. I just wrapped up my clerkship at the 11th Circuit with Judge Jill Pryor in Atlanta. So I'm very happy to see in the chat that someone's chiming in from Atlanta. Previously, I clerked at the District Court of Arizona and the Arizona Supreme Court.
Awesome, thank you. And next up, we're inviting Jonah up. Hey, Jonah, how's it going?
Hi, everybody. My name is Jonah Chavez-Griego. I am based in Rio Rancho, New Mexico, which is a suburb of Albuquerque, New Mexico. I'm a former New Mexico Supreme Court law clerk, and I'm currently clerking for Judge Gerald Baca on the New Mexico Court of Appeals. Happy to be here.
All right, wonderful. Well, thank you all so much for being here today. Let's get started. So we're going to dive in. To kick things off, we're going to start with a very serious question. What is one non-legal podcast or show or book that you're enjoying right now? Non-legal emphasis on that. Judge Hansel, let's start with you, and then Angel, and then Jonah.
Well, I tend to focus a lot more on books than anything else, and I've gotten very interested in books by Allende, and the most recent one that I read is called Zorro. And I remember when I was a kid seeing this cowboy series of this sort of do-gooder cowboy, and he would make his mark with a Z on the wall. And of course, that's as far as it went. And then I realized there's a whole history to Zorro. And there really was somebody that way who would do all of these good deeds. And Allende wrote this very compelling book about him. And so it certainly in your spare time would be a book I would strongly recommend, especially those of you interested in making the world a better place.
Thank you, Judge Hansel. I've heard of The Mask of Zorro with Antonio Banderas, but not what you're reading. So appreciate the recommendation. Angel, what about you?
My favorite TV network is HGTV. So I'm currently binge watching Married to Real Estate with Egypt Sherrod and Mike Jackson. And I started watching that while I was in Atlanta because they renovate houses, HBCUs in Atlanta. So that's what I'm watching right now.
Nice. Love a good home renovation show. All right, Jonah.
So my wife and I just welcomed our first baby in August, so I haven't had as much book reading as much as I'd like to in the past. But right now I'm trying to finish Blood and Thunder, History of the American West about Kit Carson, because it talks a lot about New Mexico and places my family's from. The show that I'm watching, which right now I'm streaming at 1 a.m. right now with the baby, is called Necaxa. I really like Eva Longoria, a lot of the stuff that she makes, like Flamin' Hot, and this is her journeying, her becoming an owner of a part of a Mexican football team. And podcast right now I'm listening to is Ezra Klein's Opinion Show on the New York Times, and then Interesting Things for Ross Dowdy. I think both of them it's nice yin and yang, and they help fill the time and make me think while I'm working out.
Awesome. Well, congratulations on your little one. We do understand
Thank
there's
you.
not a lot of time with podcasting and leisure, but thank you for those recommendations. All right. Well, why don't we go ahead and jump on in? This first question is specifically for you, Judge Hansel. So can you tell us what exactly is a judicial clerkship, and what are some of the benefits of clerking, and why do you think it's a great learning experience?
Well, I'll break it down into judicial clerks and judicial externs. Externs being people that are still in school. But clerkships you are assigned typically to work with a particular judge. Sometimes there are clerks that are assigned to handle a specialized type of issue like death penalty issues. But the more typical ones, you work with a particular judge, and the judge will give you assignments related to the cases that are in that courtroom itself. Sometimes it's simple. It's all right, there's a discovery dispute, and I'd like you to do a draft of an order. Other times it's more substantial than that, and it really goes to some of the ultimate issues in the case. And depending on the judge, they may either want you to draft a research memo that deals with a subject statute of limitations, for example, or they'll actually have you take a first draft of the opinion itself. And then often you'll submit the opinion to the judge, and then you and the judge may go back and forth on it until there is much more of a polished version of it. In addition, one of the expectations is that when court is in session, you will sit in on the court hearing, and then sometimes in breaks, you'll go back to chambers, and the judge will say, "So, what did you think?" And you'll get a chance to expound on the decision itself. So there's reading, there's research, there's defending your decision, and also just taking it in the court, be it a trial court or an appellate court, and watching different lawyers, good and bad, plying their trade.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for sharing all of that. Appreciate it. Yeah, I externed in federal court, and I imagine the level of assignments are probably much more intense when you move up into a clerkship. And so I hear you saying some of that. But the chance to observe court seems like every day seems like such a good learning experience. So appreciate you sharing that. All right, the next question is for just anyone who feels called to respond. What's one thing you wish people knew about judges and or clerks that might surprise them? And you can interpret that question however you will. Judge, do you want to go first? You gave a little chuckle there.
Oh, well, yeah, I could think of a couple things.
Okay, kick us off.
Well, certainly, I think that when you come in, be aware of what are your objectives. And when you're coming in as an advocate in court, and remember that the judge or justice, you're not the only thing on their docket. They may have 6 things before you, and they may have 6 things after you. And they have a limited attention and maybe even more of a limited attention span. So what I would often counsel is if when you go before the court, if you only were going to say one thing, what would it be? Then, okay, well, if you're going to say a second thing, what would that be? And then what would the third thing be? So come in with and you might consider presenting your arguments as sort of a checklist that way. And Your Honor, there are 4 reasons that you should grant my motion. Number one's going to be the most important one, and then you go through the list. That way, you're giving the judge a mental checklist in their minds about it, and of course, when you're on point 3, they might not be done with it, and the judge knows, there's a 4th point, so it's often very helpful that way, because you want to just not only structure your approach, but you want to structure the approach of the judge. And just a second thing too, if you're quoting from something, a statute or a court decision, for example, take a pause and make sure that the bench officer is with you. So I'm quoting from the Smith versus Jones, the appellate decision, quoting from page 12 of it. And let me just take a pause, Your Honor, so that you can catch up with me, and then you have the quote, so that you're taking the bench officer by the hand.
All right. I'm hearing know your top points and pausing before your citations. Very helpful advice. Thank you, Judge. Angel or Jonah, do you want to jump in on this one? What's one thing about judges or clerks that might surprise folks?
Sure. A judge wants a relationship with their law clerk. In law school, you hear about, everything that the judge has to offer you, mentorship, writing feedback, connections, a great network, but you never hear about what you can offer the judge. So just realizing that it's not a one-way street, it's not a one-way relationship. Judges do not know everything. They hire law clerks from different areas of the law to increase their skill set, increase their knowledge on a subject matter, especially like at the district court. If you're doing like patent law, huge asset for those cases that come before the court. So just recognizing that judges depend on law clerks for knowledge just as much as law clerks depend on the judges for wisdom.
Got it. Yes, that mutual relationship there. Appreciate that point. Jonah?
I didn't really appreciate the fact that I thought like this until I got to clerking. When you're in law school, you're reading these opinions very carefully and you're going, wow, every single word is there. And inadvertently, I got to the clerkship, and as a religious person, I thought of it kind of like inspired by God, like, oh my goodness, every single word is perfect. It can't ever be wrong. It can't ever be changed over time. And my justice was like, hey, you got to make sure that the citation is right. You got to make sure that the underlying rationale going back to the first case is good. How could that be? How could this is written, it's reported, it's published. And then you realize judges and justices are people too, and their law clerks are people too, to echo what Judge said earlier. It's like, wow, okay, I have a stake in this and making sure that it's correct, one. And two, we're just all kind of figuring it out, and we're doing the very best that we can, and no one is expecting perfection except the party that loses. They definitely want you to rethink how you did that.
Got it. So yeah, imperfection is okay. Mistakes happen. That's normal. We're all people. Thank you, Jonah, for that point. Before we move on to the next question, our final panelist is here. So I'd like to invite Dominique to come up on the stage with us. Hi, Dominique. How are you today? I think you may be muted. Okay, you should be good now. Uh-oh. Speaking of imperfections and technical difficulties, this technology will never be perfect either. Okay, let's try this one more time. Okay, well, we're working to get Dominique back on.
I think keep going with the questions and I'll let you know. It seems like his camera froze.
Oh, okay. All right, I'll keep going. All right, Angel, this next question is for you. Actually, let's go back one. The next question is for Judge Hansel and Jonah. So can you tell us a little bit about your path to the bench or your clerkship and what drew you to it? And Judge Hansel, let's start with you, and then we'll move to Jonah.
Well, when I was a law student, and by the way, my alma mater, Northwestern Law School, is also was Justice Stevens' alma mater as well, and so that's I was really happy to see them as a co-sponsor. I attended a lecture on the French legal system, and I learned in law school in France, you had 3 different tracks. You could go into civil, you could go into criminal, and there was another track, a very small track, that would end up going into the court system. And of course, I asked myself the question, if I was a French attorney at the time, or French law student, which track would I have gone to? And I think I would have chosen the track to be to go into the court system, which was quite a revelation. I practiced for many, many years in private practice, and I always had this bent about wanting to give back. And I was active, as you'd mentioned, Shante, with a number of not-for-profits. But it never was quite enough to me. And so I knew at some point I wanted to become a judge. And in a way, it's really putting yourself out there. The process in California is very complicated to do, and it does take some time to do it. But I decided I really wanted to go and do that. And it just, to me, it looked like sort of the culmination of what it meant to be in the legal profession.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. And Jonah?
So I'm the first person in my family to go to law school. I went to University of Georgia School of Law. And when I got there, I had no idea what clerkship was to begin with. I knew I wanted to help people. And truthfully, the whole idea I had was law and order, Carisi, if you will, if anybody's a law and order fan, SBU. And somebody told me about clerkships after our 1L grades. And I didn't do fantastic. I was in the bottom 75th percent of our class after the first semester. And I was only told about federal clerkships. And I was like, well, I don't think I got the grades for that. And I don't think that seems like my temperament. Those of you that are here probably tell I like talking to people. I like getting to know folks. I like being social. And from what I could tell, it was like lay monks sequestered in their monasteries, pondering the law, figuring out what to do, what not to do. I was like, this is not my style. And then as I kept going, I ended up doing my 2L summer in DC at the Mexican American Legal Defense and Educational Fund. And I had the realization, oh shoot, I can't start a family in DC, it's too expensive. And so my wife and I kind of did a soul search and went, okay, I want to give back. I want to help people. I want to get back to my community. So let's move back to be a part of Northern New Mexico's Hispanic community and do something. The problem was I didn't go to University of New Mexico School of Law, the only law school in the state. And I talked to one of my career development office folks, and they said, if you considered it a state court clerkship. I thought, no, I think I saw something on like the classes about state con law, but we don't read a lot of state Supreme Court stuff, right, in law school. And I considered it, I thought about it, and I ended up doing the applications like, I don't know. I did a lot of research with the justices and judge. And what solidified it for me was I ended up taking state constitutional law with Chief Judge Sutton, who I think is in the Sixth Circuit. And he has 2 books out. And when I read them, I was like, this is it. Because at the time, I can't remember the name of the case off the top of my head, but I think it was Planned Parenthood. But basically, Roe v. Wade was overturned when I was in DC. And I thought, okay, if we're using federalism like this, then state constitution is going to be the best way to go about doing this. And I went all in. And ironically enough, I got my offer for the Court of Appeals for New Mexico first for the 25-27. And I went, shoot, what am I going to do from 2023 to 2025? And my justice that I just finished my clerkship with the New Mexico Supreme Court said, hey, how would you like to come clerk for me? And I thought, oh man, that really worked out well, because that would have been weird. But it was a journey I didn't quite expect. I didn't know what it was, but in the end, helping people and getting to know New Mexico law and trying to be an advocate of change drew me to state Supreme Court and state court appeal clerkships.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing that, Jonah. And I feel like both of you talked about wanting to make change and positive change in the world through the court system. And you're both are doing that and able to do that. And I think we have a lot of folks on this webinar that want to be change makers just like you. And so this is a pathway that you can take. Dominique, I believe, is back and able to have sound. Dominique, you there?
Yes, I am. I'm so sorry. Thank you guys for being patient with me, but I figured it out. It's just, when in doubt, just get your iPhone out.
It's all good. Do you want to introduce yourself to just share your name, location, and where you're clerking?
Sure. I am. My name is Dominique. I am in Wilmington, Delaware right now, actually. I am not clerking for any judges anymore, but I actually just celebrated a year at my current job where I am a federal public defender in Delaware, in the District of Delaware. I live in Philadelphia, which is 30 minutes from here. But I think to answer your question about maybe why I wanted to clerk, I clerked for a federal district court judge and then a U.S. Court of Appeals judge. And I wanted to do both of those things because I went to law school knowing that I wanted to be a public defender. And then in law school, I knew I became quickly, or not quickly, but midway through law school, I realized that I wanted to be a federal public defender. And I thought to myself, if I want my clients to have anything close to a seat at the table when it comes to federal criminal stuff, I should go work for some folks who deal with that on a regular basis. And so that's basically the only reason why I wanted to clerk. Initially, when I did clerk, then I found all these other amazing things that I enjoyed about it. But I initially approached the question with a very specific goal in mind, which is to be the best federal public defender that I can be.
Amazing. Awesome. Well, thank you, Dominique. We appreciate you being here. Glad you made it. All right, moving on into our next question. Angel, this one's specifically for you. So looking back, what do you wish you had known as a law student interested in this path?
Great question. I wish I would have known about the time commitment of clerking. It is a huge time commitment. So just to give you all some specific examples, when I interviewed for the 11th Circuit, my judge was completely honest. She said, this is not an 8-to-5 job. Like, so if you accept, I want you to know, like, this is not Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. This is a tough job. And so our core hours were 9 to 7 p.m. So you're in office at least 10 hours a day, Monday through Friday. So that's minimum 50-hour work week. And you're getting paid for 40 hours. Just FYI, there's no overtime pay here. So you're getting paid for 40 hours, but minimum requirement in office was 10 hours. And that was common for every active judge sitting in Atlanta on the 11th Circuit. So someone else may have been 8 to 6 or 8:30 to 6:30, but we were all there at least 10 hours a day. And then that's core hours. You go home and I would still be working on assignments. I mean, one time I was up till 3 a.m. and I checked Teams and I saw many green check marks like, oh, it's not just me. It's not just my judge. Like, this is the workload on the 11th Circuit. So you can expect about at least 12-hour work days, but there are times where you're going to be up, 16, 18 hours working on an assignment. And for us, it was like a 4-week period where you would do that to prepare for oral argument. Now, when you're not preparing for oral argument, or if you're at a district court, when you're not preparing for trial, you may go back to those regular core hours. And that's something I was never told in law school, like looking at it from an attorney perspective, the court hours, 8 to 5, the courtroom is closed. So why are we still working if the courtroom is closed? But it's like, no, chambers is still going before those courtroom doors open and after they close. Also, just like the deadlines. So I'll say at the district court, deadlines are flexible because the district court judge sets their calendar. At the circuit court, those deadlines are not flexible. They never move unless the party requests an extension. And at least on my circuit, those were rarely granted. Like you had to have an exceptional reason for us to grant that extension. So when you have a deadline, you must meet it. And at times, for me, the maximum deadline was 1 week for a bench memo, 1 week for a draft opinion. So that was the maximum deadline. The minimum deadline was overnight. That was not a deadline my judge set. That was the party. A party filed a 28J letter for supplemental authority the night before OA. And I had to read those cases and I had to, prepare my judge for the next morning. And so at those times it sucked because I'm like, wow, not only do I have the judge calendar, but you can get surprises from a party at the very last minute. So if you're a practicing attorney, when you become one, just think about law clerks before you submit something the night before OA, because we have to stay up and we have to figure out what you submitted. And 9 times out of 10, it was not helpful. It was just, I didn't do a complete job before I submitted my brief. So here's some additional work for you to consider, but we can't because the other party didn't have time to respond. So there you go. The time commitment.
Well, thank you, Angel. It's a little bit jarring to hear about that time commitment. I feel like other folks might be feeling the same way. So that actually segues really nicely into my next question. Clerkships may not be for everybody. So they are a valuable learning experience. They can be a great experience, but how do students or young lawyers know if a clerkship is for them? How do they know if they should go down that path? Like, do you have any advice for folks who are considering a clerkship? Judge Hansel, why don't we start with you?
Well, if you're thinking of doing anything in litigation, I would strongly encourage you either to do an externship or a clerkship. You will learn so much, including whether you really want to be doing this or not. I think if you have no intention of going to court ever, and of course, as a law student, you might not really know the answer to that question. But if you're going to be a tax lawyer, an M&A lawyer, or something else that way, then maybe not. You would still learn a lot about this side of the legal system. It's hard to imagine anybody that wouldn't get something out of it. But certainly, if you really have no intention at all of doing litigation, then maybe not. But that's the only group I think I would exclude. It's a small group.
All right, thank you for that. Anyone else want to jump in on this question? Yeah, go ahead, Jenna.
Can you hear me okay?
Sure can. Yeah.
Okay. So I had this conversation a lot with the Hispanic and Latino Law Students Association. I'm still involved as an alum mentor. And what happens a lot of times, especially first-gen law students, is you hear people talking about clerkships and you go, I want to do that because that person's smart and I don't want to limit myself. Like, what if I do want to do litigation? What if I'm not really sure what M&A is or tax law? I'm nervous. I want to be the first one in my family to do well. I want to be a provider. If you were looking at it as just a gold star on the resume and it's what the PAC is doing, take a beat. I'm not saying you're wrong. Just take a beat. It's easy to do. I've done it. I feel like everybody in this call has probably had that thought where you're like, wait a minute, am I the messed up person? Am I not thinking about this? Consider it. Just think, wait a minute, am I doing this for me or am I doing this so everybody else is doing it? If you have that question, you still get to the answer of, I think I'm doing this for me. For me, on my end, on state court appellate clerkships, it is a fantastic ability to get to know state law. And I know that with federal law, we have FRCP, right? A lot of U.S. Supreme Court decisions, and they're pretty uniform. You understand what's going on. But the difference between state Supreme Courts on answers to similar questions is robust. It's just a great way to learn the ins and outs. Like for me in particular, coming from Georgia to New Mexico, I didn't know much of New Mexico law, right? Because of Georgia law, we did a lot of Georgia statutes. So it was a great way to learn New Mexico Court of Appeals, New Mexico Supreme Court precedent, how our court rules are applied, statutes, how the legislative process works, how we do statutory interpretation. And I thought, okay, that's a great way to do it. Because I still haven't itched the M&A bone or tax bone, but I feel like I like appellate work and litigation, and I know it. So at least I have like a route that I'm doing. And later on, if I want to scratch that itch, I have the ability to. But definitely, it's a great way to learn state law.
Awesome. So I'm hearing good for litigation, good for understanding like the inner workings of the courts, different pieces of the law. It can be a gold star on your resume, but definitely weigh if it's worth it or not for you individually. Angel or Dominique, do you have anything to add to what's already been shared?
I agree with everything that's been shared. I would just add good for academia. When I was in school, all of my professors had clerkships, and definitely all the tenure professors had clerkships. So if you want to take a teaching role, you should clerk because everyone who's applying for that role will have a clerkship on their resume.
And I agree with everybody. I think just interrogate why you want to be a law clerk, and interrogating that and figuring out the answer specifically of why will then do wonders in terms of identifying which types of judges might be good fits for you and which courts specifically might work out for your personality, your interests, your background, a variety of things, right? For some people, hearing, crazy hours on the 11th Circuit sounds like not a good fit. And there are other clerkships that are, not bad. And so, and then substantively the same is true. So interrogate why for yourself and then do the research to find a match.
Love that. Thank you, Dominique. Appreciate it. All right. Just to be upfront with my panelists, I'm skipping a question just so you don't get confused because we have about 10 more minutes left. And I want to get into some of the details on process. So Judge Hanson, we're going to jump right into question number 8 here. So we know a little bit more about what clerkships are. So now we're going to get into the details. So can you tell us a little bit about your application process, what that's like, what you look for in clerks? And then do you work with any organizations like the ABA Internship Opportunity Program, the Judicial Internship Opportunity Program that help get students placed with clerkships?
Well, let me talk about applications first. And take the application seriously, in the sense that we can tell if somebody's doing a slapdash completion of an application. So what I would suggest with the question parts of it is prepare your answer, revise your answer, re-revise it, perhaps show it to somebody else, and shorten it a little bit. Certainly, two characteristics that are useful are a little bit of a sense of humor with it. It makes it read easier. And second, being terse with it as well. That's also an important characteristic. And do we work with groups? We do mainly to try to do things such as this, to really encourage people to consider externships or clerkships. So we'll work with different bar associations and things of that sort to do so.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for sharing about that. And then once you hire a clerk, like what is your relationship like with that clerk?
I meet with them. I'll meet at the beginning and talk about expectations. What is it? What are my expectations? What should they be doing in order to get the best out of the experience itself, being sort of forewarned about different things as well that they might find a little bit surprising, things that they'll get more out of it if they're keyed in on it. Encouraging them to take advantage of the fact they're here in the courthouse every day, and sometimes also to try to get experiences in some other courtrooms, which we encourage doing. And then one area that I guess I'm a little bit more unusual is I will give them the opportunity. I'll tell them, if you want to get published, I will work with you on that in an article, and we can do that. And so think about that. Is there a subject that really interests you? And so I've had 3 people that we've co-authored articles together, and 2 of which have indicated to me it was the article was very helpful for them getting their next job, so that's something else. But I think having that, and then I will often try to meet with them almost every day with things, and just as I said, they'll see what's going on in the courtroom, and then we'll talk about it. There are moments they will come in and their eyes are like saucers about, did I just really hear what I thought I heard in court? And this is a trial court, so of course there are many attorneys that are not so polished that are here. They'll see a lot of styles, and this is one of the things I encourage them to do with it. Look at the style, see what's working and see what's not working as well, because that's just as valuable when you look at a advocacy style and you think, oh my God, did this person graduate from law school, much less pass the bar exam? And so it's a great education that they get, that they see that, and they can obviously see my reactions on different approaches as well. So all of that is important, and things that I try to talk about with them right at the outset, and then as the time is going along as well, to be able to do that. And certainly writing is important, and some of the clerks and externs, I would have to say our experiences are mixed with it, and certainly from the point of view of becoming a clerk, of really having an expectation when you get an assignment about what is it that the judge is looking for from you, and of course the more polished you can be the better with it, because you need to look at it that the judges can be, sort of your ally for the rest of your life, and, help you get a job, help you get the next job, somebody that you can talk to on legal advice and what have you. I mean, not on a case, but just more life advice. I am still in touch with people that I've worked with over the years.
That's amazing. Very supportive. And it sounds like you've been such a mentor to a lot of people, Judge Hansel. We did get a follow-up. We got a question in the chat that I wanted to ask you as a follow-up. What kinds of skills and experiences do you like to see highlighted when you're looking for a clerk in their application?
Certainly, to the extent that person has perhaps done things in the clinic, or some other way too of actually have had some cases. That's something that's of great interest to us. Taking classes, and which of course are more or less required anyhow in evidence, civil procedure, or on the criminal side, criminal procedure, is certainly also a bit of a positive, and even taking advanced classes there. You'd like to see writing samples, and the more detailed the writing is, the better for it. And it doesn't have to be law review. It's just, but things that people would have that might be relevant to it. And then just something else that's unusual, some interesting pro bono activity that somebody's been involved with, or a life experience that somebody's been involved with as well. Those are often of great interest to us, that when we look at applications.
That is amazingly helpful. So I hope everyone is taking notes on all the things that can make you stand out in your application. All right, so this question is for everyone. And Judge Hansel, you've already answered this, but I'm curious what other folks think. So what is one thing that you all have seen, or maybe more than one thing, that can make a candidate stand out in a clerkship application? Dominique, can we start with you on this one?
Sure. I think, after you've identified why you want to clerk and sort of, your motivation behind it, and then you take the time to identify judges who sort of feel like they might be good matches, explaining to the judge, to some extent why you think, you might be a good fit, is always helpful. I think one of those things that judges get so many applications, and anecdotally in so many chambers that I've heard of, a tie-breaking thing sometimes tends to be if, like, you have a plausible connection to the place, to the court, that the court, or the place that the court is sitting in. And so to the extent that you can take advantage of those sorts of things, I think those help folks stand out. Maybe more importantly, and there's a whole sort of other world, like this is of course all within the parameters of like formal application processes, but there's sort of extra, formal processes, i.e. contacting like former law clerks, right, of the judge, and whether there's someone you might have a connection to via where you went to college or to law school, to the extent that you can talk to people who have worked for these judges prior to even applying, to get a sense of whether they sound like someone you want to work for. But if they do sound like someone you want to work for, and you have a productive and meaningful conversation with them, you'd be surprised to the extent that judges rely on their former clerks for recommendations. I certainly was the beneficiary of that sort of thing, because a lot of judges do get so many applications that, little determining things like where you're from, or like, did some former law clerk put a call in for you, or did a professor put a call in for you? For better or for worse, sometimes those make a big difference. So, the primary important thing is identifying judges that fit your needs and that you think you would be a good match for, and then doing the legwork to try to make the connections.
Got it. Yeah, connection to place, connection to people, and doing that work. Thank you so much, Dominique. Angel, do you want to jump in on this question? one thing that can make a candidate stand out, or more than one thing?
Yes, sorry, I was like in the chat. So
Oh,
for the judges, I clerk for what would make someone stand. So think about it, you're applying with many classmates. Some of you may have the same GPA, same class rank, right? There's hundreds of law schools, so that means there's hundreds of people ranked number one. So what will help you stand out is your connection to the judge or where the judge sits. So someone said they're from they're in Atlanta, so you have a connection with everyone on the 11th Circuit sitting in Atlanta. That's a bonus, and you will want to put that in your cover letter. Name drop a former law clerk. So you can say, I attended this session and I heard your former law clerk speak. So write our names down and our judges' names. If you remember them, you should name drop them. If you have expertise in the area that the judge is unfamiliar with, that is a plus. My judge had 20 years of civil litigation. My entire application, I was talking about the Federal Criminal Justice Clinic. And that was my interview, like how much expertise I had in federal law, because in Georgia, Alabama, and Florida, there is they have capital cases. So that helped. And then a career before law school. So about legal experience, but also if you have a career before law school, if you were a teacher, judges love teachers. If you worked in, I've hired someone or suggested that the judge hire someone who was a waiter for 2 years because they had excellent customer service. They worked well with people and they were excited about answering the phone in chambers. And I'm like, you need someone who wants to answer chambers phone. So those are things that would be tiebreakers. But in general, someone asked about grades. I'm going to be honest. For circuit court clerkships, some judges have cutoffs for grades. But like I said, if everyone applying has the same grades, you need something that separates you from those 1,000 applicants who all are ranked in the top 25% of their class. So don't think that your grades alone will get you a clerkship. It will not if everyone else's application looks just like yours.
Yes, thank you, Angel. Yeah, that the work experience before sounds like a really helpful piece to help folks stand out. All right, and thank you for answering questions in the chat, Angel. And Jonah, do you want to weigh in on this one?
Yeah, to build off of some things that Dominique and Angel said, Dominique's point about getting to know who you're applying to. I did a lot of research on current and past clerks on LinkedIn. So I reached out to people and said, hey, can we do like an informational? If people don't know what informational is, I'm not asking for a job. I'm just straight up wanting to pick your brain. Believe it or not, lawyers love to talk about themselves and the law. So most of the time people are like, yep, come through, let's do it. And it's Zoom, phone call, you name it. And you can kind of get an idea. In my particular case, I was told my justice could be a little challenging, very particular. And I knew that going in. And even with that, it wasn't a fantastic fit personality-wise. So if you go in with clerkships knowing that maybe I need to be looking for a fit on my end as much as they are looking for a fit on their end, I think you have a really meaningful experience, and you'll be able to have a judge that you can use for networking and just to bounce ideas off of. And as Angel pointed out, there are some GPA cutoffs for some clerkships. Not every judge or justice is the same. And Federal Court of Appeals, U.S. Supreme Court, a little bit more picky, right? But at state Supreme Court, state Court of Appeals, it's kind of all over the place. I did not take evidence. I did not take a lot of bar classes because I was like, if I'm paying out of pocket, I'm going to take some I want to actually take. So I took a lot of law and religion. My friends jokingly call it the power to the people track, immigration, right? And whenever I put my applications out, I had to explain why I didn't do law review, why I did not do moot court, why I didn't do any of the stuff that a lot of other clerks are doing, especially considering I was not ranked at all. I wasn't the most smart person in my class when it came to the curve. So on my applications, I made sure to highlight, look, I didn't do these things because our Hispanic and Latino Law Student Association was really small and I wanted to grow it. And it took a lot of work with admissions, and I had to make a call like, look, do I want to stay married and put time into that and keep that going and do school and do the Hispanic group, or do I want to add on and have to take away from somewhere? And I had to make the call like, look, I just don't want to do that. And I knew that I would be closing some doors, right? Because I know some justices and judges, state and federal, if you don't do moot court, law review, law journal, or certain appellate litigation clinics, it's just not going to work. And I knew that was okay. I had to find someone that was able to look past those things and read my cover letter on why I wanted to do this. And in my case, it worked, right, for both of them. So even if some folks tell you this may not be a great fit, take it for what it is. It's an L on that aspect, but there's like 10 other doors that open until you know. Bet on yourself, know what you want to do. And if you feel like you can make it happen, then make it happen. Bet on your journey and your experience, get you to the right place. Don't try to make us, what I think the saying is, a square peg into a round hole.
Yeah. Yep. That's
There's one more important thing I forgot to say, which is Jonah reminded me of. Many judges, and increasingly so, many judges require work experience after law school before they give you clerkships. And so the world of opportunity really opens up for a number of reasons, including there are judges who just simply won't hire you if you're still in law school. So getting some experience 1 or 2 years out of law school will make a world of a difference for a great number of judges.
great. Thank you for adding that, Dominique, and thank you, Jonah, for sharing all the things that you did. You know, they are journeys, and I say, you know, the best opportunities sometimes find you. So we have a question popping up here. We're going to move into our Q&A session. How much weight is given to grades compared to participation in honors programs or extracurriculars? This is coming from Giselle. Anyone want to take that one?
Well, I'll jump in. I think it's really going to depend on the judge with it. There's not a hard and fast rule in connection with it. I would say grades have the advantage on it. It's easy to compare. Now, having said that, and just to add to the comments from before, you look at grades, but as you're making comparisons between several candidates, the fact that that maybe they're ranked slightly differently is of no consequence on it. In terms of we don't really look at it that finely, and so maybe somebody that's got good grades who also is participating in other things might be a positive over somebody else that just has good grades, for example. So, but it's not. We don't do it in a way that's really scientific. At least most of us don't do it that way.
Got it. So grades aren't everything, and having great grades probably won't hurt you in the process.
Correct.
Okay.
I think the question of having great grades, or what weight, if any, grades play is often like a proxy for, can this person do the job? And many judges, you know, it's hard. Like, you get a lot of applications, and so that's kind of like one of the easiest ways of answering that question, can this person do the job? But I do think it is not the only way of answering that question. And so it really depends on whether the judge themselves wants to push beyond that sort of metric or not. And so that's where, again, it's important who exactly you're applying to. There are some judges who are hard and fast about certain cutoffs, and, you know, that's their system, and God bless. But there are a lot of other people who consider a number of other things. Like, my judges cared very much that I had work experience before law school. They cared that I had, you know, I did a fellowship year after law school before I started clerking. They cared that I had a demonstrated commitment to public service. So there are a bunch of things that judges care about, and all of those things, I think, demonstrated to them before they hired me that I could do the job. So.
Got it. Cool. Thank you, Dominique. Appreciate that. So well-roundedness we're hearing is very important. All right. I have another question here from Eileen. How do judges see lawyers applying for clerkships later in their careers rather than in the first few years out of law school?
Well, if you want to look at something that stands out, that certainly would be it. It leads to the question, why? And there's either good answers to the question or not good answers to the question itself. And in other words, if somebody is sort of all over the map with their career, or it looks like they've kind of reached dead ends, something like that, then the fact they're applying later in their careers is not a positive. On the other hand, there may be people that would have a good reason for doing that. Let's say they're they haven't been litigators. They've been doing something else, and now they want to go a different direction in their careers, or maybe they had family obligations. They may have had some things that would have prevented that. Maybe they had just had loans out the wazoo, and of course we haven't talked about money, but it's not a well-paying position, so for some people that's just not an option right away because of loans or family obligations and what have you. So there may be excellent reasons for it. So I think that's really the question on the judge's mind. Why? Just for starters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for that, Judge. Well, I'm looking at the time. So yeah, I just want to extend a lot of gratitude to our panelists. Thank you, Judge Hansel. Thank you, Angel. Thank you, Dominique. Thank you, Jonah. We so appreciate you being here today to join this webinar for us. And I think I will hand it over to Carlos to do any final closing remarks, and then we'll let everyone go about their day. So thank you.
Thank you so much to all of you. I'm going to take everyone off stage now, so thank you for joining us. All right, folks, thank you for being here. This is one of our most requested topics, and I know that a lot of you want to go down this career path. So we hope that this helped you. I see that some of our panelists have been answering questions in the chat, so that's great. Thank you, Angel. If you want to reach out to Jonah dropped their email into the chat, so thank you for that. And other than that, we'll see you when we have our next fireside chat. Take care, everyone.